just in the last year or two, especially in speed chess, while mixing and matching his openings, he's keeping his opponents guessing. He's not a sitting target anymore, especially with the black pieces, and his results reflect that. And okay, a Sicilian, and will we see a Sicilian Najdorf? Magnus, meanwhile, snacking. Wow.
On the board, David.
And this is Maxime Vachier-Lagraf's speciality when Maxime has black, or at least it used to be. Magnus using his opponent's weapon against him.
Oh.
Psychology.
There's so much dynamics when you do that, because one would think that your opponent's strength, you don't want to go into that, but it can also play in your favor by disbalancing your opponent. It's something that Maxime might not have expected, although we've seen Magnus go for the Najdorf. So it's going to be interesting. I'm still thinking about the near-perfect game that we just had in Game 1.
Yeah.
A 99.8 and 99.5% accuracy, perfect chess, and when you have perfect chess, it's a draw. Guy, you said Magnus has to solve the puzzle. It's not going to be an easy one.
Yeah. When Maxime plays 99.8, I mean, that's as close to perfect as you get, right? I start wondering what one move wasn't the accurate one.
Yeah, I think we'll have to do a deep study into that one move that both players played that were inaccurate or naughty. But even the chess goddess Kaiser, I don't think she could play 99% accuracy like those two did in the last games. So Sicilian is an imbalance. To be accurate in this game, I will say, than the previous one, because it is one of those wild positions that will rumble on.
Yeah, Magnus has to solve MVL is our feature chat. He's going to be stuck on this puzzle for a while. And this last move by Maxime, F3, also hints at this move I was just about to say. You want to start advancing on the king side with your pawns, G4. Once again, the Frenchman with 3 names, he makes his intentions clear. He is going for those messy, chaotic positions. I think we are going to see the opposite side castling.
I think it's very likely now. Maxime has basically declared that the white king is not castling on the king side. Yeah, it never will now that he's thrown pawns forward on that flank. So the white king is going left, it's going to the queen side, and Magnus can start preparing an attack on that flank. But how to deal with these pawns flying forward? It's slightly surprising to me that Magnus would choose the Najdorf, basically playing on the opponent's home territory, and then pause this early. It's still relatively well-known waters. Okay, he brings his knight forward, clearing a square for the other black knight to use potentially. Maxime advances.
The thing is, right, Maxime plays this with black, which means that he knows this with white also really well. Because, of course, when you're preparing at that level, the kind of opening preparation that these players have, Maxime knows the ins and outs of Najdorf. So where does Magnus plan to get his advantage here?
Yeah, to me it's surprising. When I prepare for my opponents, when I study my opponents, I look in the database, I look at all of their games, I build an opening tree, and I see, okay, here is their favorite opening, here is the opening they score strongest in, and then I avoid it at all costs. But Magnus, he's pretty much done the opposite. For example, if I know my opponent plays the French defense themselves as black, I will never play it as black against them, because I know that they're familiar with all the little details, the nuances. Magnus going against conventional chess wisdom.
Yeah. When you're playing against Maxime, don't play the French unless you're Magnus Carlsen.
Is that psychological, though? Because that would be the normal strategy. MVL knows that most players won't play that opening against him. And then Magnus does, just, showing him, I don't care, I will beat you in that opening as well.
True. It's the mind games. It's the kind of fight for psychological dominance. If you can beat your opponent at what they know best, then you really break their spirit.
Yeah.
And Magnus,
so imagine if Magnus wins this game.
Yeah, this would be huge.
But that's far off right now. And I think it's Maxime with the last 2 moves that he's indicated that he's going to go for the king. And that's pun intended. Black's king and the king of chess here as well. Knight d7 falls back with the knight, and I think it's time for white to step up with the queen, get that king to safety, and then look at Harry the h-pawn advancing down the board to assist Gary there.
Yeah, white has a ready-made attack. You called it, Tanya. Very logical move now. White's king is ready to jump over to safety, hiding behind those white knights on the queen side. It's going to be very difficult for black to whip up any type of initiative on that flank. I don't see where the Black King really wants to hide either. Do you hide behind, do you kind of castle into it, as we say? Hide behind your pawns on the king side, but white has a ready-made attack there. Oof, I've always been terrified of these types of positions my entire career, just because they are so kind of irrational. It's so hard to get a grip. Every move is just kind of living life on the edge for both. But here, the stakes are higher for black.
Yeah, every move is a high responsibility move in this kind of a position and this kind of an opening. And Magnus really burning the clock. So a little bit more unfamiliar for Magnus than it is for Maxime. It's sort of been his bread and butter his whole life, the night off for Maxime Vacher-Lagrave. And this is what Magnus has up his sleeve. So, David, you said Black's king has got no safe ground. And because there hasn't been a shot castle, he strikes in that flank right now, asking Maxime what he wants to intend. You would love to go h4, but let's point out that there's a pin along that diagonal, so it really doesn't help. After a move like h4, black can actually just capture on g5 because you can't recapture with the pawn.
Yeah, and Magnus's idea is to force the opponent to capture with a piece, and here he will happily offer a trade. And actually, long term here, black is doing pretty well because this pawn is isolated. So if it ever gets to the endgame, which is far from a guarantee, then black will have weaknesses to stare at. And actually, his idea is very opportunistic because it does also rely on the trick that pawn is met by a queen check. Suddenly, just before the white king kind of scoots over to safety on the queen side, it gets checked. And of course, you can't castle when you're in check, so you have to block or move the king. And for example, if you block with your bishop, suddenly the black queen just retreats, takes this pawn, and same issue for white. This is long-term a huge weakness in any endgame, especially if the queens disappear. And of course, black has conveniently offered that trade of queens. Note how the knights defend each other as well, so white's bishop can never really take this knight. Magnus, yeah, he's really kind of showing that he's flexible in these types of positions. I don't know if this is opening preparation. He spent a bit of time, but h6 is very rare to be able to play this as black, and he's found the correct moment, and for the first time forced Maxime to think.
Yeah, a very concrete play. Maxime has slowed down. Now that we've discussed these ideas, you don't want to take on h6 because of the check. You don't want to go h4 because the pin doesn't work out in your favor. I think Maxime has to think about long castle. Get your king to safety. And I think he's played the move. And David, now the point is you want to play bishop to e7. Wow, Magnus does it. I thought this just loses the d6 pawn.
Yeah, he's willing to sacrifice a pawn just to get into the endgame here, Magnus Carlsen. Bishop takes bishop now does allow the d6 pawn to drop. It's only defended once, it's attacked twice, and I think we're headed in this direction. We'll see the queens traded off. Black will most likely step the king forward, forcing the white rook back, and then he's going to try and stack up his rooks against this weakness. It's a whole pawn here. I'm skeptical. I think objectively white's doing pretty well. The evaluation bar's slightly in white's favor, but Magnus, we all know his expertise in the endgame. He's just playing for his type of position, having been maybe out-prepared in the opening.
But surely when you're down a pawn in this position, you're just trying to hold this one.
Yeah, it is Magnus. You never know. First he gets an equal endgame. Well, first he starts with the worst endgame, then an equal endgame, then he wins. That's how he rolls.
Yeah, he's got this incredible ability to not only convert winning positions flawlessly, but somehow win worse positions as well. So Magnus right now, this is our live board, and Maxime Vacher-Lagrave still thinking if he wants to go into that endgame and challenge Magnus, where Magnus really does thrive. I'm expecting queen takes pawn right now, because if not that, what else?
Yeah, Maxime has kind of burnt his bridges. He's not going to get an attack now, a direct attack at least against the black king. So why not grab material? You have this slightly worse pawn structure for white on the king's side, so you might as well suffer for something. Often that's just how top-level chess works these days. Someone gives a little bit of material, whether it's a pawn, whether it's a piece, and then they have this long-term compensation in return. And it will be a theme of the game, white's extra pawn versus black's kind of control on the king side. And Vacher-Lagrave, he's clearly reluctant. He knows it's a Magnus type of position. I think maybe he's just scared of the opponent here, understandably. But eventually he will surely go and grab this pawn. Who can resist? Free material?
Maxime can.
Maxime.
Maxime can. And I really like this move. David, I was actually thinking about this because you want to come in with a tempo, and the b7 pawn is so much more important than the d6 pawn, which is a lifelong weakness in the position.
Why is that?
Because the d6 pawn, Kaya, will always be under fire. It's not going anywhere. The queen and the rook are This is tricky because Maxime is inviting Magnus to actually jump in with the knight to defend that b7 pawn, but that's the whole point of this. Now when you grab d6, David, the black knights are disconnected, and after this queen trade, suddenly there is pressure on that b6 knight, which is no longer defended by its own friend, the other knight.
Yeah, suddenly white would have this one to do earlier because rook takes knight and white would win material. Instead, you have to play really ugly moves like retreating to the back rank. Suddenly, white is a pawn up, and this knight looks really beautiful, actually, putting pressure here. Black's pieces just discombobulated, as Simon would say, and just unable to really fight back. And as you mentioned, knight takes pawn, a huge threat. You actually want to win this pawn and then the d6 pawn in that order only. So how does Magnus first protect this one safely?
I mean, rook b8 is a very ugly move. You never want to make a move like that. Devalbar says it's possible, but not an absolute disaster.
Yeah, I think this is last resort for Magnus. If he finds nothing better, he'll defend his pawn with his rook, but nobody likes to make their pieces passive. You said ugly, and that's the definition of ugly. Rook to b8 on a really passive square. A whole knight, 3 points, is tying down a rook and pawn worth 5-6 points together. And okay, we get engine suggestions just below the board, and we see some moves. King to c8 there, it says that means castle's queenside being the best, actually by quite a distance. Black's best move here is to castle into the firing line, not fearing any attack, and just saying, okay, we can go for an endgame. And then the black king is actually pretty decently placed, defending the pawn on b7. Black's second best move is your move there. We've both termed that ugly here, Tanya, rook to b8. But everything else gives white a huge advantage.
It's on the board. He goes for it.
I think this is more human. Castling queenside feels a bit risky there. It would have been a really airy side of the board. Lots of holes around. So we can understand Magnus's decision.
And it was only these two moves, right? Whatever you do, you have to defend the b7 pawn. That collapses, the position collapses. So it was between these two moves. And as you said, from a human perspective, long castle just looks extremely scary. So Magnus going for rook to b8. I might be tempted to actually not trade the queens here, because now Black's king is just stuck in the center forever.
Yeah, stuck in the center, and this pawn isn't running away anytime soon, so you can snack on it later. Let's see what Maxime Vachier-Graf decides to do. Yeah, really tense position here. Magnus is basically just sitting and waiting and saying, please take the pawn, and he does. So we're headed into the endgame now. Black's king is surely going to advance, kicking away that white rook. There we go. And it's all about how weak are white's kingside pawns. He's a pawn up. White is dominant on the queenside. Long term, he's going to win that. But does black have counterplay, Tanya?
And David, the counterplay that you were pointing out earlier with black's rooks doubling up on the h line, we see another point of Maxime's move with the knight to a5, that now the queenside rook is actually tied down to defending that b7 pawn. So not that easy to create play against the h2 pawn of white on the king side, which actually frees up Maxime.
Yeah, I mean, I would take white here every day. Usually, I prefer the compensation in terms of kind of long-term strategic trumps, but I don't see how black kind of at least speedily gets any initiative going here. I don't think Magnus is enjoying this position that much.
He's not. And Maxime's played so confidently. He's also up on the clock here. He's up upon, right now, Magnus still has to neutralize white's edge here, has to prove his compensation for that pawn.
And I'm curious, is there any way we can check the accuracy levels up to this point? I have a feeling Magnus, his accuracy levels maybe a bit lower than Maxime's.
Oh, if you, yeah.
I think we need our viewers to tell us. Check on chess.com/events, and yeah, let's check out those accuracy levels, which are just through the roof so far in this match. Magnus does move his knight away.
Right now it says 100.
Ooh. Wow. By both
Maxime?
players?
Yeah. But I'm wondering if this is not updated.
Wow, we'll get an update on that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was close to 100% in that game one, and Maxime has been on fire these last couple of months. But of course, Magnus has just been unstoppable this whole year.
Yeah, Magnus has been in beast mode, boss mode throughout the year so far.
It's the final boss.
Yeah, he is that big boss. In order to beat him, well, in order to win any tournament, you have to get through him first. That's the issue. And knight to f6, a nice move. There's actually a trap in this position. It looks like white can trick black, but actually would get tricked in the process. One move not to play would be a very tempting bishop takes a6. It looks like you're deflecting away the black pawn in order to land a devastating knight fork, a knight check, forcing the black king back, and then feasting on the black rook. But Tricksters get tricked here. Bishop takes pawn would be met by a skewer. The black rook moves across. You can take as many pawns as you want, but you will lose a piece in the process. So some sneaky tactics here. Magnus has set a trap, which of course Maxime won't fall into, and he does just shift his rook to g1. What's the idea here? Is he going after this pawn?
I think so. And it's so tempting as well, right? Because it forces black into the defense of that pawn. It's on the board, David. Maxime going for all the weaknesses here. Does Magnus now have to fall back with the knight? Because losing a second pawn just would be disastrous here.
Yeah, it's not pleasant, this choice for Magnus. Either he has to retreat this knight, go back where he came from. This knight was on this square just 2 moves ago. He's lost time, Magnus. Or he has to retreat the other black knight. And this one doesn't look great either. You've lost some you're a pawn up. Feels like it's turning in Maxime's favor. Valuation bar slightly on white's side too.
And his accuracy is 99.3. MVL Magnus is 98.9. He's down to 98, Magnus.
Slacking.
Yeah, slacking.
Unacceptable.
Yeah. Wow. Just the level these two are on today. It's incredible. Really putting up an amazing fight in the winners final. This is going to be, I mean, obviously it's going to be super hard to just get in a win today. And that means maybe we will have Armageddon.
Yeah, this match very well could go down to the wire, and we've seen Magnus have this fantastic year. He seems absolutely unstoppable, but even for Maxime, one feels like it's been sort of a resurgence for him these last few months, the kind of chess that he's been playing. I mentioned the Tata Steel, as well as in SCC making it to the semi-finals. He's such a speed chess specialist. This is going to be a close battle. It is rightfully the winner's final.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. MVL proving that he belongs here. In the Champions Chess Tour, it is very nice to finally see a match between these two this season. Two players who have grown up together in that golden 1990 generation. With you as well, David. What do you remember of Maxime with him?
I was young. I played him in the World, or was it European Under-10 Championship? And then I actually had a match against him when we were both 9-10 years old.
Ooh.
I went over to France. I flew over to France. We played an 8-game rapid match.
Wow.
And he beat me.
Oh.
The score was 5.5, 2.5. And I remember even back then, he was playing the Sicilian Najdorf. He was playing the Grunfeld every single game. He stuck with those openings for, 25 years, and very successful with them. Onto a calculation type of position, he would see deeper than me. And it's been an uphill struggle for me against him ever since. He's always been one of my kind of kryptonites.
Oh.
But yeah, Magnus as well. I met very young and, of course, pretty decent player too. But yeah, these two have had some great fights throughout the years. It's always been epic. It's always been very, very close. And I think the fact that they're the same generation means that they know each other very well as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Maxime knows that Magnus, there's only kind of 2 scenarios where he struggles. Either you attack him and you catch him cold and you kind of checkmate Magnus, or you frustrate him. That's why Magnus, I think, walked away from World Championship matches because he didn't like these long grinds where it's very level, very drawish, margin for error is so small. And I think that's what he's doing now. He's frustrating Magnus. It's like 99% accuracy. It's so close. No blunders. If you avoid blunders against Magnus, you have a chance. And Maxime playing this very, very strong brand of chess right now.
Yeah, these guys are amazing. We agree with you, Andrea. And the bar is slightly up for MVL. What do you think right now in this game? Do you think it's going to be a draw, or do you think we'll have a winner in it?
If anyone's playing for a win, it's got to be white here. You're up a pawn. You've done everything right after winning that pawn. You've tied down black's rook to defend a pawn on the queen side. So that's really one piece that right now, at least, Magnus is playing without. You've managed to take out your own pieces. You're also trading black's most active bishop in the position, trying to take control. Fight for that d5 square, and Maxime has managed to offer a trade with his own light square bishop. So I really like what Maxime's done. Again, feels like a game for 2 results. I think most likely will end in a draw, but Magnus will have to prove that.
Yeah, Magnus will have to prove it, and we can see in his body language he's not enjoying the task. He's just got to sit still right now, black, and kind of wait for Maxime to come up with a plan. Does Maxime go direct? Does he kind of continue slow playing it? Maybe start pushing some pawns on the queen side? Yeah, Maxime is at least burning some time, so Magnus will be optimistic about that. It's not easy. It's not 100% straightforward to find a productive plan for white.
It's really not, and you've got to sort of be patient here. You know, you were pointing out this tactics with the bishop takes pawn, vacating that c6 square. Now with black's rook that has jumped forward, after bishop takes pawn, black actually can't recapture the bishop on a6 because now knight c6 will win the game. But what Magnus is relying on instead of recapturing on a6 is actually just sliding with the rook on a8, lining it up with the bishop and the knight. So this tactical blow still doesn't work, but it's always in the air.
Yeah, I think that's the main reason Maxime is hesitating from trading bishops. He wants to, at some point, land this trick. He's always been so efficient since a young age at finding these tactics, and he does play the move b3. So if Magnus is kind of careless and allows this trap, it could eventually be winning for white. Doesn't work quite yet, but I love his last move as well. Getting ready to improve his king slightly, then he'll improve his pawn slightly, put every piece, every pawn on perfect squares, and then go for the action. Meanwhile, how does Magnus break out? This tension on the queen side that you pointed out, Tanya, is so frustrating. You can never ever push your pawn because knight c6 will always be a nasty, nasty fork. So you're just tied down forever. And Magnus, he's the one to pause this time because no obvious moves for him. If he takes this bishop off the board, white will happily recapture with the knight. And this white knight might even come round to a nice outpost on d5. No tempting options here for black. You just have to continue sitting passive.
It's sort of like a slow waiting game, and Magnus doesn't wait any longer. He does trade off the bishop, and now the plan that you're saying, it really wants to be played, right? You reroute your knight, and you try to get to that d5 square, which is such a central point in any Sicilians that we see. Knight e3, knight d5, the c pawn starts moving up the board, the king joins the party, and the whole aim, the idea is that you have to be slow and steady, but create a passer on the queen side for winning chances.
And Magnus is playing a game of distraction here. He's trying to remind white that he has a weakness. Maxime's h-pawn is all alone and isolated right now. Is he threatening to take it? That's the question. And Maxime, does he have to go passive? Of course, the answer is no. If you ask any top player, do you want to put a piece on a passive square to defend a mere pawn? But sometimes you have to. And there we go. Maxime decides he has to keep the material advantage. The rest of the board not quite in his favor yet.
Yeah, it's all about playing it slow and taking it slow, right? You want to reroute your pieces, but first just don't lose out on that material advantage that you have. Black can step up to the h3 square, also targeting the f3 pawn, but then white will simply slide up with the rook and keep everything defended. The plan is clear. After you've saved all your pawns, you can fall back with the knight, land on d4, and eventually, because David, let's not forget, even black's rooks are stuck on the king side, right? You've got your army that wants to target the weakness, but that means that the queen side play is free for white. King comes in, pawns start rolling, and that's when we'll find out whether this advantage is going to be enough or not.
Advantage, but it's quite kind of murky, but it could become something much more tangible if white does indeed eventually land a knight on d5. I wouldn't envy Magnus right now. As you say, Tanya, just rook here. It looks like the only active possibility, but easily shut down. White covers all of the weaknesses, and then it's one-way traffic other flank. Magnus needs to weave that endgame magic. How's he going to achieve this? 4 minutes against 5 minutes. Accuracy level is still pretty high, I assume, but that could well turn in the next few moves.
Do you think he'll save it?
I'm going to back Maxime here. I think Maxime, big favorite actually to win this game. How about you, Tanya?
He's going to push. Maxime. I don't think anyone in the world I would bet against Maxime in this position, but I think Magnus with his endgame touch. Oh, it's going to be a big fight. And look at that. Magnus goes for very direct play on the queen side, but this might give Maxime more targets there with the pawns moving forward. Well, knight anyway wanted to land on that e3 square. Knight e3, what Magnus wants to do is bring his own knight from d7 to b6 to control the d5 square.
And Kaya, you need to break the tie. What is your prediction?
I'm gonna bet on a win for Maxime. He is, the expert in the opening that Magnus chose. And I think that was a mind game by Magnus Carlsen because he thought, well, a draw is the most likely. If I win it, that's going to be huge disappointment for MVL, so I'm going to do the Najdorf. But I think MVL will be cold as ice and win it.
I actually think if Magnus would win with a night off, psychologically that's match over.
Yeah.
But the position that we have on the board, it's not going to happen.
We're so influenced by white side. I think we would all say he's going to win this one, pawn up, endgame. But yeah, Maxime, he's capable.
If anyone is, it is Maxime. I mean, he's just playing such brilliant chess, such accurate chess, taking his chances when they come on the board, whether it's tactical play, whether it's playing slow and steady, positional, strategic, rerouting, as we're seeing right now, or the way he played against Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, winning that match, or how he took down Alireza Firouzja. Just so versatile and playing every position to perfection.
Ooh, pawn to a4, that's not a move you normally want to play. For example, after pawn takes pawn, white will have to break up his own pawn structure. But this is typical Maxime. He's very direct if he can be, and I'm skeptical. Suddenly the black rook switches focus, and look at the white a pawn, isolated. Look at the white c pawn, also isolated. Suddenly Maxime, he's kind of turned his advantage, which was very long term, into something dynamic, and it's got to work now for white. Otherwise, your extra pawn might fall, and with it, all of your advantage.
Yeah, a4 is not a move that you play lightly. It's such a committal move. You've given black a clear target, not only the open c line, but that pawn on a4. Black's knight can also jump to c4 and trade off white's active knights there, where one rook will keep pieces tied down on the king side, defending h2, and the other rook will start targeting the other weakness on a4. Yeah, I'm surprised with that decision by Maxime. Just as you were saying that, he's got this long-term play, long-term advantage, slow, steady, accurate chess, and a4 on the board.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's held Max again since he's been young. He sometimes rushes in positions where he can just take it easy, take it slow. Here you can just kind of push your pawn one square forward just to stop black advancing if you want, or you can start bringing the white king forward. Only later, when you're 100% ready, then you push the pawn to a4. I think Magnus, if he were in grind mode in this type of endgame, he would take it easy, take it slow, and only go for it at the right moment. To play a4, weakening your pawns here, it's a really high responsibility, and you have to hope it pays off. He plays the move king to b2, defending his knight right now, but suddenly the black pieces will come into the game. Suddenly some targets maybe on the third rank, some loose pawns, loose pieces here. I imagine the other black rook kind of coming around, going over to help its fellow over here. And that's what Magnus is doing. He's targeting the white king first. Once the white king moves, it has to. Don't allow a discover check. There we go, king to a2, slide across. The other rook surely coming around. No, Magnus just trying to repeat. Magnus is silently offering a draw here. If the white king goes back, he'll kind of dance around with his rook as well. We can see a dance between the rook and kings.
Yeah, this is a big moment, which is just going to give us a peek into the minds of the players, and Maxime declines the repetition, so he wants more. He defends the knight with the rook.
Okay, great to see positivity there. Great to see ambition from Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, but he still has holes in his position. These weaknesses that Magnus is now trying to target. It's suddenly a 3-result game. Earlier, I would have described it as only a possible win for white or a draw. Magnus, though, he's probing. If one of these white weaknesses... 2 minutes each now as well.
Very tense position, and black has a direct threat of attacking the pawn. For white, in these kind of positions, it's all about whether you want to push that a4 pawn and fix it on a5. It gives you this target on that black pawn next to it for a long, long time, but it needs to be timed well. Rook h3 does attack f3, and I think the reason that Maxime isn't rushing with the natural rook defense one step on that f2 square is because he's considering the move a5 here.
Played, Tanya.
On the board.
Good spot there. Not going passive, not purely reacting to the opponent's threat, trying to create your own threats. And again, that's kind of indicative of Maxime's style. He's always on the front foot. He doesn't want to be the one just kind of answering the opponent's moves every time. He wants to dictate the pace of the game. Now, where does the black go? Black knight go? Back or forward?
Not backwards.
Not back.
That looks terrifying, right? Because if you go back, you're just inviting white's knight to come forward with a check, and you don't want to lose control of that square.
Yeah, so the black knight now maybe jumping in. This is where we're different, Tanya. My first reaction is go back. I agree. It didn't look pleasant, but Magnus does indeed follow your advice. The black knight clearly on a better square, better circuit than it would have been if it had retreated. Now, Black has to be careful where he puts the king. I was going to say, again, my first instinct, go back to safety, but Magnus is brave with his king. That's why he's a superior endgame player to most in the world. He's very taking these risks because his king might well prove an active piece later. Suddenly, White has to defend this A pawn. How, though? How do you keep it intact? Black trying to equalize the material here.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a way, and it's really not that clear. A knight c4 just hits that pawn, and you don't want to make a move. Well, I don't even know. Rook b3. That's kind of nice because what you really want is activity. And there are some ideas of the rook not only giving a check on b6 once the knight moves from c4, but also the rook could land on b7 with threats along the 7th rank. And it might be headed there. Is rook b7 a possibility right now?
I think it's definitely a possibility. I think that would be the most consistent move, especially following up what Maxime has done. But he slides back. He's lost a move here. He pins the black knight, but he could have done this last move. I think he could have reached the same position just with one extra move here, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Sign of uncertainty for the first time in this game.
Yeah, and especially now because black can actually take the a5 pawn with the rook with a check.
Yeah, what could be more logical? What could be more tempting? Rook takes king. The king could retreat, could go forward. If it's Magnus, he would go forward. So let's assume it does. And the black knight now would be under pressure. Instead, Magnus delays that decision. He postpones taking on a5 because he actually might want to go for checkmate. The black rook wants to slide to b8, cutting off the white king from using the b file, and then he wants to take a5. And Maxime goes on the other flank, pawn to f4.
Oh my gosh, and it's a mistake. Is Magnus going to go for a win now against the white king?
This looks so scary. What happens if Magnus... Two black rooks cutting off the white king. Here, I guess Maxime is relying on the fact he can block the b-file with his own rook. Now, rook takes pawn. At least there's one hiding spot. But Magnus is turning things in his favor. Wow, never write him off the world number one. Threatening checkmate on the board. Oh, sorry, my arrows. Rook takes pawn. Would be a huge threat, but defended by Maxime, and the game goes on. White living on the edge here.
Wow, so Magnus has managed to pick up that pawn and restore material balance. It's his knight which is threatening the e4 pawn. The rook on a5 really active. You know what? I think now it's Maxime who needs to be on the defense here suddenly.
Definitely. And imagine Maxime's mind right now. He was in control the whole game. He was dominating. He was a pawn up. Suddenly it's level material. Suddenly White's pawns are all really loose. White's b pawn not happily standing there, and...
Whoa! Oh!
Fighting the black king, the black knight forward. This is bizarre.
And Magnus there reacted. He was really surprised by Maxime's decision.
Yeah, the black rook is attacked, but it can just move to any safe square. And black is about to grab a pawn, win a pawn.
Whoa. Is it the Magnus touch?
Might well be. He's relying on a trick. He wants to play knight to c7 check, pick up black's a pawn, but look how active black's knight is in the center. Black's rook clearly more active than the white rook. Black's king more centralized than the white king. All of these small factors will add up. If it becomes a race, only Magnus can win. Still maybe within the drawing realms, but Maxime's got to be really careful. Look at Magnus harmonizing in the center, coordinating his pieces, moving in for the kill.
Yeah, you just compare all the pieces on the board. That rook, knight, and king, just 5 moves ago, it was a completely different scenario. Now they're all into Maxime's camp, and the f-pawn is about to join the party.
Yeah, black's f-pawn, watch it march forward, f for forward. Whereas the white b-pawn can advance, but it might just get off if it walks too far up the board. White's knight, meanwhile, is terrible. You've got to say that white knight is just too far offside. Also, look at the clock.
Oof.
Ooh, he allows a check. He also allows the black pawn to come forward with gain of tempo in some positions. Maxime, I think the clock is getting to him. The nerves, the turnaround. Black gives a check. We see just below the board as well some move suggestions. Black can push pawns with, with a very strong position with winning chances, but he gets greedy here, grabs Magnus.
And now can he just actually trade everything off and go for a king and queen endgame there? Once pawns are promoted.
Yeah, I think he could have done.
What happened to the bar here?
Yeah, it's gone back to the middle. The problem is black's knight is pinned. It's caught in the crossfire. White's rook lining up against the black knight, black king, and the only way to keep it intact, the only way to defend it is to give a pawn back.
Yeah, you have to push the F-pawn because I think if you defend knight with the rook, then white can actually trade everything off and start marching the board with the B-pawn.
Wow, Tanya, you're right. Black has to push his F-pawn, play pawn to F5, otherwise white is winning.
Exactly.
We'd see a turnaround where white's B-pawn, he plays it, white's B-pawn would have... Okay, can Maxime hold the draw? Suddenly it's white with the narrow path. You have to move your rook, you have to take black's pawn. Natural, but white's king is in huge trouble on the edge.
Yeah, that feels like a bit of a kill zone. You have to watch out for any checkmating ideas, and we saw Magnus do that against Jan yesterday.
Watch out, checkmate in one is threatened. Black's rook threatens to jump the whole way over the board across to A3. Check that white king, trap that white king.
Less than 10 seconds for MVL.
He's done the right thing, he's running.
You know what's going to happen, David? White's going to sacrifice the knight for the pawn, and we're going to have a rook and knight versus rook.
Oh, and another 50 moves of fun. Just for anyone wondering about endgame theory, rook and knight versus rook is a draw, but you have to defend accurately for a long, long time. And I think we will head in that direction. White will sacrifice the knight for black's pawn. Black's pawn is the only potential winner because it's a future queen. Every pawn's a future queen, potentially. But, okay, we're still going around. White's king is still cut off on the back rank.
We're still going around, and Magnus isn't going to make it that easy. If Maxime is able to give up the knight for the pawn, that will end in a draw. Maxime will be up for that task, but Magnus isn't going to let that happen so easily. He's going to try and defend that pawn for as long as he can.
Slightly surprised Magnus didn't try and trap that white king on the back rank. Now, offering a trade of rooks. If Magnus trades off the rooks now, white's knight should...
9 seconds for Maxime as well. He has to be precise in this one.
Yeah, I think the pawn is just too far away from promotion. The problem is, for black, the only way to win is to bully white's knight away. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be quick either. What's Maxime doing with this king? He's going the long way around. Black's king in the center, kind of acting as a blockader. Whoa, knight takes knight. The black pawn runs. A similar pattern to that beautiful idea we saw with Nepo. But look at this, the black pawn will promote. But there'll be a knight fork at the end. Black can make a new queen, but white will deliver check. Knight to E3 check, a fork. He makes a rook. Chess humor there.
Wow.
And a draw.
Very, well, humoristic then, I guess. Ending to that game. It ends with a draw. Another one, you guys. They are still tied after 2 games. Maxime Bachiedragram defending there in the end. And with the white pieces, he secures the draw against Magnus Carlsen, tied after 2 games. 2 more rapid games to go to decide this winner's final. Okay, what happened here? So Magnus fighting here to get to defend heroically, I guess, then?
Yeah, especially at the end. Let's just do a quick slow motion replay of those final few moves. It happened.